Hello and welcome to the World Watercolor Month prompt for July 30th, which is Ornate. I thought this would be a great opportunity to paint some roses because we haven't really done flowers up until now. And so this prompt works for that. And we've only got one day left after this. I thought this was a great opportunity. I'm going to put the camera up in the tripod now so that we can start the painting. Hopefully you've had time to take a screenshot of the reference photo. Okay, so this paint is probably going to go fast because we're going to paint loosely. You can always slow the video playback setting down if you need it to slow down a bit. And if my voice is annoying at the slower sound, you can always mute me while you watch the video in a slower fashion. When I paint in a loose way, like we're going to do for this, it is a lot more challenging to talk through each step, in part because I'm painting more intuitively, which means I'm going with how I feel and it's more expressive and I'm making decisions very spontaneously. It's definitely not as planned out as some other compositions are. I do have it zoomed in a bit more to the paper, which means you're seeing less of my paint tray, but I think that might be helpful in this instance. I would love to see in the comments which way you prefer. Do you prefer when I have things zoomed up a bit more on my paint or on my paper, but you don't see as much of my palette? Or do you prefer having it zoomed back where what you're seeing on paper is a little smaller, but you have more of the paint and you're seeing the color selection? So just leave me a comment below and let me know what you think. Okay, so the drawing for this is going to be so basic. We're just going to, kind of in the center of our paper, just going to make an indication of a vase, right? This bottom, which is a curve, and the top is curved. I'm going to come up from the middle, but it's curved a bit more. And I've got some leaves. I'm going to make maybe this one. I kind of want to give just a quick little leaf shape here. And I love this leaf that's on its side right there. And then we've got got another leaf that's on its side, but I'm going to alter that a little bit. I don't want to put too many in, because if I put too much in, then all of a sudden I'm going to be focused on the drawing. We're going to not do as much drawing with this one. Okay, and this vase is almost like kind of buckety shaped. It kind of flares out a little bit here. Okay. Now, these flowers, I'm going to just indicate a few spots. I've got a big rose that's right in the center here. And it takes up, it's very large. It's almost there. So I'm just kind of going to give it a big, large space, right? And then I've got one that sits off to the side here. We've got, if I can imagine the stem would be pushing this way. And this one is, here's like where the center is. And then it's wrapping around like that. Right, so I'm just kind of giving an indication of where that is. There's a rose behind there, but I might leave that one off. And I think I'm going to do this rose. I'm going to definitely do this one here. I'm going to maybe make it like this. And there's one that's right kind of behind it, or sticking down behind it. So I'm going to maybe lift this one up a little bit. I think I like that better, and open it up. Okay, and then we're going to have one that sits back here that's kind of like this. And here, instead of doing the second one that's back here, I think I'm going to have it kind of come up like a little bud that's smaller. Okay, and that's it. It's just a really kind of, and I almost don't even want to do that. Okay, and then we're going to have some leaves that stick out here. I love how we've got this leaf that comes out here, and there's another one that's kind of, they're really piling out of the vase, right? And there's one that kind of sticks down here. And there's one that comes out, it really extends out here. I want to make sure I get this flower in. Okay, I think we're going to call that good. Now to make these roses, I'm thinking about the center, and then they cup around. So we've got a center, and it's just cupping around. Same thing here. Cupping, and this is sitting behind this one. This one we're seeing, this is the only one that we're really seeing kind of from the true center, right? Because it's facing towards us. And then this bottom leaf dips down, so or petals, I'm sorry. And then the same thing here, like it kind of gravity sort of pulls it. So if you look at a rose, oftentimes the bottom, whatever's facing to the ground, this tends to be more compressed because these petals are falling towards that center, which has the most support. And then down here, towards the bottom of the rose, it opens up and it's looser. And so you'll see like a tighter pattern at the center and up, and then a looser pattern towards the bottom. Not always, but often. And so it's kind of a good way to look at the structure. Pay attention to those things if you like painting flowers, which I really do. Paying attention to the structure can be really helpful. And we're going to fill in lots of leaves there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and lighten that up. Like I said, it was a really quick little draw. Now in the reference photo, the vase is white. I love a clear vase because then we get to see all the green of the stem. So we are going to do a clear vase instead of a white vase. And of course, we're not painting all the dining room table and chairs and things like that. I think this was a Mother's Day bouquet that I had received. Okay, I'm going to start with I'm working on relatively small paper. I'm going to start with my number 6 brush. And we're going to lay down our first bits of color. And so we're going to use, I'm going to get some piles going. I want to use quinacridone pink. I'm going to start up here. Actually, no, we'll use this. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to get a nice pile of quinacridone pink over here. I'm going to end up using sap green for my green. And I'm probably going to use some of this. Oops, I got some pink in there, but that's okay. I'm going to use some of my, here, actually, let me move this over because I'm making my piles so then you can see what piles I'm making. I'm making a pile here with lots of yellow. This is going to be my leaves. And I'm adding in some sap green to this side. There's some leftover paint from mixing up before. That's okay. Okay, and we'll let some of that mix together. And later, we're probably going to end up adding in a little bit of blue to that, but right now we're going to leave it like this. And if we use blue, it's going to be some French ultramarine, kind of in this corner. Yeah, okay. And then here, we're just going to, I'll move my pink over to here so we can see it. And I love to add, these have like a warm tone to them too. So like it's got the pink, but it almost goes to red where it is shadowed, and there's some purples in there. So I'm going to add in some Carmine red over here. Just got kind of a nice blue. I'm probably going to add in a little bit of my permanent blue violet. I'm kind of trying to work quickly here. I'm doing it just over the top of the paints that are already in here. It's okay to not clean out your palette every time. I'm okay if my colors get a little muted. They're strong enough that they're not going to be muddy. And then let's add in, yeah, I think that's it. All right. So we're going to start with a nice soft pink. Let's put the pink, and we're going to start with a lighter color and then charge in darker. So let's go ahead and we're just going to spread it over where these flowers are. And I'm just popping that color in. And now while it's wet, I'm going to switch to a smaller brush. I'm going to use 2 brushes. I'm going to probably hold them both in my hands so I can swap back and forth and back and forth. And I'm going to get some darker version of that pink, and I'm going to mix it a bit with my carmine, a little bit with my purple. And I'm just going to come in and start developing. We've got some like the center part, right? And then, and I'm looking, we get like vivid pink above that, but this gets a bit more red. So I'm going to move to my red side. I'm really looking at the colors. So I'm going to pick up some more of my carmine, and I'm going to pull that in here. I want to do this when this is going to flow. And then the top is like this brilliant pink. So I'm going to use just my Quin pink there. Okay. And then we're going to do the same thing with this flower here. This light is very directional and on the top. So like this one's really light. This one's a little darker, especially along the bottom here. And then it's a little brighter. It's like a nicer bright pink right here. And we're just worrying about, I'm going to let that flood out a little. Same thing with that. Okay, and then this top flower is super light up in here, but you can kind of see it's like there, and it gets dark right kind of on the edge. So I'm going to just darken it right there. It's going to flood into that other rose. That's okay. I'm going to kind of, I'm keeping this loose intentionally. So you can see I'm kind of pushing in some of that darker color. Just kind of going back and forth. If it gets really dark, I can always dry my brush and pull up some. Like here, I want to pull that up a little. And we're going to go attach this one. This one is probably starting to dry a bit. So I'm going to, that's okay, but it's not going to flow quite as much. So I just have to be aware of that. I can always kind of dip some color back in there to pre-wet it. I'm going to do that. And I'm going to let these kind of flood out. Okay. It just keeps it that. This is that like intuitive part, right? Like I just want to let this flood out. All right. And those are those decisions you're making on the fly. Here, this one's pretty dark. So we're going to kind of give him some darker, I'm even going to go in with this darker red and just whoosh, just like that sound effects, right? And then this one has got some really nice highlights on it, so I don't want to lose all of those, but I'm just going to kind of go in with a little bit of that brighter pink. Okay, we've got a really nice start. And we're going to go in and develop some more definition in a bit. Okay, oh, I love the start. All right, let's add the same thing for our greens. So the green closest to the rose, I don't want it to be too like incredibly bright, and it is darker. Oops, French ultramarine. So I'm going to pull that side that had the sap green with the French ultramarine more, and I want to pull in my stem here and here. And there is a lot of green back here, right? Because we've got a lot of leaves. So here, I'm just like where the base of that flower would be, and then pulling down into here. And we've got a leaf here and here. These leaves are darker, but the ones over here are lighter. So I'm going to pull from remember I had some lighter sap green mixed in. I'm going to pull that here because these ones are lighter. And I'm just kind of dipping up, and we're going to add more definition. This had like this, oh, there's so many leaves that come out that are really like, that are swinging through. It's like really packed heavily with leaves, which I love. Okay, so now I'm going to grab some of that French ultramarine. Like this one is really in shade, so I'm going to do that there. This one is kind of partway in both. These are all mostly dark. All right. And now we're going to take just the French ultramarine, and I'm going to use a little bit of, tiny bit of the yellow to get kind of a turquoisey color. This is going to help develop my vase. Okay, and I'm just going to come down really loosely. I'm going to add just a little bit of blue, but really soft blue. I'm going to kind of like, there. I just want to, it's just an indication that this is the base, right? And then we're going to have stems while it's wet. I'm going to go right through where that leaf was, and that's okay. All right, now let's add a petal. So it had fallen here. Right, and I'm going to go back to my bigger brush, and let's add a leaf. And now we're just going to grab some color that is like the same color that's in the vase, kind of blue, and we're just going to kind of streak it out. And a little more. Just creating kind of a, there we go, kind of a background. And I'm letting it fade. But I want this to be a little straighter. Okay, so when you do this, it should line up pretty well right here, right? Because otherwise it doesn't make sense to the eye. So like even when you're being loose, it still needs to make sense. And this is darker. I'm going to add a little bit of my pink over here to create this nice gray. but because I'm using my pink to create the gray with the blue, then it's gonna all look good. And because, oop, that was probably a little too, let me get a little more blue in there. Okay, there we go. I'm just gonna this is just kind of my shadowy. I'm just playing with the color actually, but I'm creating kind of a shadowed spot because remember the light's coming down like this, so it just adds interest. Okay, now let's go back into those roses. I'm gonna put my bigger size 6 down. I'm gonna switch hands, and we're just gonna add a bit of that rose pattern into there. And I'm gonna use, I'm gonna be looking at the flowers. So that's front one. I'm gonna use a little bit of that permanent blue, or permanent blue violet, along with mixed with the quinacridone rose, and you see I get this really beautifully vivid magenta color. Love that. And so we're going to come in, and I'm looking at my here's the other thing that's interesting about roses is they usually have sides that are darker, and so I'm looking here, and it's wrapping around. I'm going to be careful not to put my hand in there. You start out and you can almost make these little tiny C shapes, right, to kind of develop the inside. And then there's usually one side that's more in shadow. And for here, it's this one. And then it has got like a really nice lip here. And then there. Okay. And then there's a little bit of shadowing on top, but it's a little lighter. So what I'm going to do is rinse off my brush. And I'm just going to pull some of the pink up into here. And I'm going to pull some of this out because I want to have it be vivid and deep, but I don't want it to be so dark that it, like, we want to have a lot of nice contrast, but we also want to make sure that it's not so contrasty it doesn't look right. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing for this rose over here, and I'm going to kind of work with, I'm looking at the reference photo, but I'm actually more looking at what's going on here. And so what's going on here is that this just has naturally created this lovely spot. You can kind of see, right? Like just the way the watercolor did that for me. I didn't have to work for it. And so it just, I'm going to follow along with those lines that were already created. Now I'm going to get a little bit of the pink, and I'm just going to kind of soften some of that out. And I'm just dabbing my brush along, see? Just dabbing it, dabbing. There. And I'm going to kind of push this down like that. This is a big flower. Same thing here. I'm going to kind of push this one out a little. Okay. Isn't that pretty? Isn't that interesting how like quickly we can develop just gorgeous shapes? And it was such a loose paint. And here, like here, we're going to just develop kind of the side. We're giving this some dimension. All right, and I'm going to soften. I'm going to use just some water to soften that up a little bit. I'm going to leave that one alone. We're not going to overwork this. I do not want to put so much paint in here that I start to lose the softness and all of a sudden I'm overworking it. We want this to be loose, so I've got to really try not to. This one we're going to kind of go like this. It's got some dimension there, and then it gets dark here because it's in the shadow. So we're going to, and that helps to develop, see how now all of a sudden this rose, this front rose has more shape. Right, and I'm just going to kind of like soften that. There. Okay, we're going to soften this a little. Oops. And if I don't like something, I'm going to grab a little bit of paper towel, like this line I don't love, so I'm just going to pull that out. If you think something's getting too dark, you just go ahead and pull it out. This, I feel like I just want to add a little more of that purpley color. There. I like that better than that. It just got kind of red. And we're just kind of dotting in, like this is kind of falling this way. So I'm adding a little bit more dimension and depth right here. And we're just playing with it. This is such a fun piece to just go in and just kind of develop. We're like charging in color, but we're thinking about preserving the highlights because that's what makes these so pretty. Roses have these really interesting shapes and patterns to them, and so you want to, you're coming in and you're painting those shadows in, right? And making sure that you paint around. So like that's the process of negative painting, is by you're painting around the highlighted or lighter areas. This one has this kind of interesting shape here. That's a little darker than I want, so I'm just going to paper towel it up. It does get dark as we get down to this middle though, right? And I don't have a good stem coming off of this, and I want one. So I'm going to, while this is still wet, I'm going to make my stem more to the blue side because it'll flow in well with that. And I'm going to kind of, there we go. Ooh, got it to the leaf. That's okay. That's okay. Actually, it's okay if it flows together. We're keeping it loose. Sometimes I need a reminder myself. Okay, and then this has, this, it kind of comes down like this. And we're just kind of painting in those shadows. I'm going to add a little bit more off to the side here. This one needs a bit more, like, you can't really see where the center is. So we just need to kind of ring that around a little bit. Okay, there we go. And then the last flower is this one over here, which is a bit more, it's almost tulipy-like in its shape. Although this one has bled out a little more, so we're probably going to have to work with what we have. And this one is, this is on the darker side, and so I'm going to pull more of that purpley color in with my quinacridone pink, that dark magenta color, and I'm going to kind of pull that in here. And you're going to see more into this, like, this is going to be that darker there. See how it's definitely darker? And we're going to pull some pink in there to make sure that we still see that it's a pink rose. And then it's a little softer as we get here. Oh, I'm so sorry for my dogs. They're being very obnoxious tonight. Okay, there we go. I think we're going to call that good. I'm going to add, this petal disappeared, so I'm going to add that back because I like the idea of having a petal there. And now we're going to go in and add just a bit more definition to those leaves. So I'm going to pull up my green, and I'm going to pull in some of the green here and here. Not too much, because I kind of like what we got going on down there. But I do want just a little bit more. Because we have like this darker blue color that's really, it really makes it for pretty, like it's really pretty right here. And we've got like this yellow, this more yellowy color right here. So it's a combination of this yellows, like where the sun, where, not the sun, but yeah, where the lighting source is actually the table lamp. But here we go. I'm going to add a bit more of the sap green back in there to get a little bit of brightness in. Right on some of these leaves. There we go. And I'm thinking about the leaf shape, and I'm just dabbing and pulling, right? Here, same thing here. We're just kind of dabbing and pulling to get those in. And I'm going to do a little bit, there's like almost a little highlight here. It's like the light's getting through, even though there's a lot of shadowing happening here. And there, I like the idea of that. Okay, I think this side looks heavy, so I'm just going to pop a few down here and a few up here. There we go. All right. Let's go back in with our French Ultramarine, and we're just gonna shore up this vase a little bit. I'm just gonna come in and give it a little bit of a, there. I'm gonna add a little bit of green into that. And the bottom would be nice and clean. Like this line, I've got a little too messy. Like that's it. Like when you paint loose, it's like this nice combination of things that are really tight. You know, you've got like some hard edges and some, you know, some areas that are very defined. This is a little dark. I'm going to just pull a little bit out of that. There. All right, I think this one is done. This is the perfect painting for some like really soft background wash. And so what I'm going to do is I always like to pull the colors that are already in the painting. I'm going to use I'm going to use the pink, but I'm going to pull in a little bit of the same yellow that I used in the green of the leaves. That way it doesn't look out of place. I always like to kind of join and unite my colors. I'm going to add a lot of water. So here's what I have. I've used a little bit of this permanent lemon yellow into this well where I was mixing all of the colors for those petals. And I'm going to make it really watered down. And that's what's going to be my background. And I'm going to just start back in here. I'm going to let it touch in some places and not in others. Like I'm going to go right over the top of a few of those leaves. And then others I won't. And I'm going to just kind of go in and dip up and same thing. Like I'm going to let it flood in to some of these flowers. And then other ones I'm going to go around. And it just, I feel like it just adds, I'm going to go all the way off the page here. But I'm not going to go all the way off the page here. And that's going to help my eyes just kind of swoop around. I'm just going to come in softly here, right? Maybe I'll go all the way off. I don't know. And if we want to, we can pull a little more of the pinky purple if we want. In some places, like down here, I'm going to pull a little bit more of the pink purple in. Maybe a little bit down here. But I'm going to let it stay warmer towards the top. We can even get a little more of the yellow in there to really warm it up. We're just using color temperature to, yeah, I guess we're going to take it all the way to the edge. Sometimes I don't, sometimes I do. When we painted the fish yesterday, we left it kind of as a vignette, but I think this one will bring all the way to the edge. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is my brushes nice and juicy, and while this is wet, I'm going to pull up some of my Quin pink, and I'm going to do some splashing, because I love a drippy paint, like this. Okay, and we're going to do a little bit of green down here, but I'm going to be careful and just wipe away where I don't want it. I think we're going to do a little more green. I'm going to kind of put my hand, okay, so I want the green to be here, but I don't want it to be here. So I'm going to put my hand kind of over that and then use my thumb. And then I can kind of pull out where I want to. Oh, I like that. See, that's, I pulled out a little too much. That's okay. We can go back in. This is where it's just fun because you're just experimenting, right? And I'm going to go back to the pink. As this dries a little bit, it'll start to dot a little differently. Oops, I'm going to pull that off of there. And if I get it, I'm just pulling them up with my fingers. And I want to, you know what I want to do is pull kind of almost like a purpley gray color, mixing up with the colors that I've used in the rest of the painting. I don't want to introduce any new colors. Let's add a little French ultramarine to that. Okay, so I've got like a kind of a gray. I'm looking for kind of a gray, blue gray, and I just want to. I'm gonna add a little bit of depth to some of this. I'm going around the petal. Just to, we've got a shadow happening, right? There we go. Okay, I'm going to go back to my more blue color, like my blue, yeah, and we're just going to kind of pull this in a little, because that's a little too much, and I'm going to just kind of pull that in a little. And let's go like this. Okay, all right. I think I'm going to leave it alone because this is one of those things where if you keep messing with it, eventually you're going to wreck it. So we're going to call this done. It's this really cute little loose rose painting. And once it dries, it's probably going to lighten up a bit because that's what always happens with watercolor. You can always go back in and add a bit more definition if you need to. I'm going to, there, pop some paint on there. So we can always add a bit more definition if we want to. And like if we want to splatter a little bit more in here. See, now I'm getting more defined splatters. Whereas before, the wetter the paper is, the more they spread. And if I want the little droplets to be more defined, then we have to do that after the paper's dry. So we could do that. We could dry it and splatter some more, but I don't think we're going to. What I do think is that I need some darker blues. I'm going to grab some of this French Ultramarine and mix in with a little bit of sap green so it's not all blue, but I do need some darker tones in here. That's missing. Like these would be dark in here, right? And so I just want to kind of, and then let's add a little bit more just green with the yellow. Let's pull some of this out so that it spreads. There. And I'm going to take that really dark green and I'm going to pull in down into this space a little. There. Okay. I think that's it. I think we're going to leave it alone. And that's going to be the painting for Ornate for July 30th. If you really enjoyed this video, make sure you hit subscribe. Oh, look at how I added that paint, and since my background is still wet, it's just spreading out. I love what's happening there. That's super exciting. I knew the background was wet and I was going to have a little bit of movement, but I'm excited about how much that's moving. And it's really fun to do these loose little paints. Every time you paint it, it is going to look different because the paint and the water they're interacting differently, and you just kind of feel like you feel it a little differently each time. Like each time you paint it, or you make different decisions, or you say, "Oh, I'm going to try it this way or that way." And I think that's what I'm really trying to get across is that these kinds of paintings, you're learning from them. They don't always turn out in the way that you expect them to, but that's part of the magic. I'm just coming in. Okay, so one of the things that happens is so often values are not deep enough. That is what wrecks paintings. So you have to be willing to go in with that super dark paint and just give it that dimension, because that's where the dimension comes from. And it's hard to do that sometimes because it feels like, I shouldn't have done that. It feels like you're going to wreck it in that moment because you're adding such dark paint and you're just not sure what's going to happen. But that's really, really important. And if you pay attention and like look at your favorite watercolor artists, oftentimes there's such deep values. And I think if you're newer, it's really easy to be afraid of those deep values. But try it out. Like, try putting the paint in much darker than you plan on and see how it goes for you. I'm going to add a little pink back into that. Okay, so it's got a little vividness. All right, I'm done. I'm going to dry this and peel the tape and call it good. And like I said, it would be fun to take the same reference photo and paint it 5 times in a row and see what you get for each one. This kind of painting, I did this small. It's on like a 5x7. These are excellent to have on hand for greeting cards. So I know we're filling a prompt, but I like to do these where I'll do some flower vases like this. If I get flowers for an occasion from my husband or my daughters, then I can use those as inspiration and do some little loose paintings like this, and I just put them to the side, and then when I need a birthday card or a thinking of you card or a thank you card or anything like that, I can pull out one of these paintings and make it into a lovely little card. So, okay, thanks so much for watching, and tell me in the comments again if you like it zoomed in on the painting more, or if you like it better when I have everything zoomed back and you can see everything going on in the mixing tray and on the paper, because I'm always not quite sure what is the most helpful for you. And so, all right, with that, I'm going to sign off for today.